The wind howled like a wounded animal through the Wyoming mountains, driving snow sideways across the narrow trail. Evelyn Hart pulled her worn woolen shawl tighter, though it offered little protection against the storm's fury. Her fingers, once steady enough to thread the finest surgical needles in Boston's prestigious hospitals, now trembled from cold as she struggled to keep the lantern lit. The abandoned logger's cabin she'd rented for a pittance groaned under the assault of winter. 3 days she'd been here, 3 days since she'd fled her wedding, fled the lies, the whispers, the shame of accusations she couldn't disprove. Better to be thought a runaway bride than to marry into a life built on falsehood. She measured her remaining supplies with a practiced eye, half a sack of cornmeal, a few strips of jerky, melted snow for water. Perhaps a week's worth if she was careful. After that, well, spring was still months away. A sound cut through the storm, not wind, but something alive. A horse's whinny, high and distressed. Evelyn pressed her face to the frost-covered window, squinting into the white void. There, at the edge of the tree line, a dark shape against the snow. She should stay inside. Any fool knew that. But the shape wasn't moving right, and that horse, she could see it now, a bay stallion with military bearing, stood guard over something on the ground. The doctor in her, the part that had taken an oath to do no harm, and by extension to help where help was needed, overruled common sense. She wrapped herself in every layer she owned, grabbed the lantern, and pushed into the storm. The wind nearly knocked her flat. She fought forward, one hand on the cabin wall, then tree to tree until she reached the stallion. The beast snorted, ears flat, but didn't bolt. Its reins were tangled in the brush, and at its feet, a man. Face down in the snow, a dark stain spreading beneath him. Evelyn dropped to her knees, her trained hands already moving, breathing, shallow but present. Pulse, weak but steady. She turned him carefully, biting back a gasp. Blood soaked his right side, the fabric torn by what could only be a bullet wound. Fresh blood, still warm despite the cold. The man's face was angular, weathered by sun and wind, with day-old stubble and lips starting to blue from cold. Mid-30s, she judged. Strong build. Someone used to hard work. "Can't leave you here," she muttered, though he couldn't hear. The stallion nudged her shoulder as if in agreement. Getting him to the cabin proved nearly impossible. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dead weight in her arms. She tried dragging him, but the snow was too deep. Finally, she remembered something from her grandfather's farm. Make a travois. Using the man's own lariat from his saddle and branches hastily cut with his knife, she fashioned a crude sled. The stallion, surprisingly, stood still as she tied it to the saddle. Perhaps the beast knew she was trying to help. Inside the cabin, she worked with economical movements. Water to boil. Thank God she'd kept the fire going. Her medical kit, carefully preserved from Boston, hidden beneath the floorboards. She'd grabbed it in her flight, some instinct telling her she might need it. The wound was bad but not fatal, if infection didn't set in. The bullet had passed through the flesh below his ribs, missing the vital organs. Lucky, if being shot could ever be called lucky. She cleaned it with the last of her precious carbolic acid, stitched it closed with the silk thread she'd been saving. As she worked, she noticed things. His hands, calloused but well kept. His clothes, quality wool and leather, not flashy but expensive. The gun at his hip, a Colt .45, well maintained. This was no drifter. She was tying off the last stitch when she found the papers in his coat. Her hands stilled as she read the name. Cole Maddox, Maddox Range, Wyoming Territory. Cole Maddox. Even in Boston, she'd heard whispers of the cattle wars in Wyoming, the fights over water rights. Maddox was a name that came up often, one of the biggest ranchers in the territory, a man who'd carved out an empire in this unforgiving land. They called him iron-hearted, ruthless in protecting what was his. What had she gotten herself into? But it was too late now. She'd made her choice the moment she'd knelt in the snow. She covered him with every blanket she owned, stoked the fire higher though it ate into her precious wood supply. The fever would come soon. It always did with wounds like this. She settled into the rickety chair beside the bed, her grandfather's Bible in her lap. Not for the first time since fleeing Boston. She wondered if she'd traded one kind of danger for another. But at least here, in this frozen corner of nowhere, she was making her own choices. The storm raged on. The fire crackled. And Cole Maddox breathed, each rise and fall of his chest a small victory against the Wyoming winter. Near midnight she dozed, exhausted from the effort of saving him. She woke to find the stallion had somehow pushed through the door she'd failed to latch properly, standing guard over his master like a four-legged angel. "All right," she told the horse. "You can stay, but you're eating my cornmeal." It was then, banking the fire one more time, that she noticed the footprints outside the window. Fresh ones, circling the cabin, too recent to be filled by the still-falling snow. Someone had been here, watching. Her blood ran colder than the wind outside. Whoever had shot Cole Maddox, they'd followed him. And now they knew exactly where to find him. She checked the door bolt, tested the window shutters. His Colt lay on the table where she'd placed it while treating him. She'd never fired a gun in her life, but she picked it up anyway, the weight of it foreign in her hands. In the bed, Cole Maddox stirred, muttering something about water rights and a name, Thatcher Doyle. His face contorted with fever dreams. Evelyn sat back in her chair, the gun across her lap, and prepared for a long night. She'd run from one life only to stumble into another's deadly business. But she'd be damned if she'd let anyone, not Thatcher Doyle, not the devil himself, waltz in here and finish what they'd started. She'd saved this man. Now she just had to keep him alive long enough to find out why someone wanted him dead. The wind screamed through the gaps in the walls, and somewhere in the darkness, wolves howled. But inside the cabin, the fire held steady, and Evelyn Hart kept watch, a Boston lady turned frontier guardian, waiting for whatever dawn would bring. The fever came with the dawn, just as Evelyn had predicted. Cole Maddox thrashed in the narrow bed, his skin burning beneath her palm. She'd seen this too many times in Boston's charity wards, the body's fight against invasion, blood and flesh warring against corruption. "Doyle," he muttered, jaw clenched tight. "Water rights. Filed first. Damn thief." Evelyn wrung out another cold cloth, pressed it to his forehead. The snow had stopped, but the wind still rattled the windows. She'd used the last of her clean linen for bandages. Now she tore strips from her spare petticoat, the one she'd worn to flee her wedding. "Easy," she murmured, though he couldn't hear her through the delirium. "Save your strength." His eyes flew open, unseeing, the color of storm clouds. "The creek. Thatcher can't have it. 20 years we've run cattle there." She held him down as gently as she could when he tried to rise, strong, even weakened by blood loss. His hands caught hers, grip fierce. "Who are you?" His voice cracked, eyes struggling to focus. "Someone trying to keep you alive. Drink this." She helped him sip water mixed with willow bark tea. He grimaced, but swallowed, some instinct trusting her even in his confusion. "You're not from here." Not a question. Even half-conscious, he'd marked her Eastern accent. No more talking, rest. But he fought the fever with stubborn will. "Doyle's men. They find me? You're safe. The storm covered our tracks." A ghost of a smile. "Safe. In a line shack with a stranger." His eyes sharpened for a moment, taking in her appearance. "You're the runaway bride. Heard talk in town. Boston lady who left some banker at the altar." Heat flooded her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. "And you're the rancher who's been shot over water rights. Seems we both have our troubles." He started to laugh, then winced as it pulled his stitches. Fair point. The lucid moment passed. He sank back into fever dreams, muttering about his sister Molly, about cattle dying of thirst, about papers filed at the territorial office. Evelyn gathered pieces of the story from his rambling. Thatcher Doyle, a speculator from back east, trying to claim water rights Maddox had used for 2 decades. Legal trickery backed by hired guns. She kept her vigil through the day, rationing her supplies carefully. The stallion, Storm, she learned from Cole's fevered murmurs, had made himself at home by the door. She'd fed him some of her precious cornmeal, and he'd repaid her by standing guard. As afternoon shadows lengthened, she heard it. Horses approaching, multiple riders moving slow and careful. Her heart hammered as she peered through a crack in the shutters. 4 men, hard-faced and armed, studying the cabin. "Tracks lead here," one said, voice carrying in the still air. "But this snow's made a mess of things." "Check it anyway. Mr. Doyle wants confirmation." Evelyn's hands shook as she picked up Cole's revolver. Think. What would they do? These weren't lawmen. Their manner screamed hired muscle. She made her choice quickly. Throwing her shawl over her shoulders, she stepped onto the porch, leaving the gun hidden behind the doorframe. Sometimes a woman's perceived helplessness was its own weapon. "Gentlemen," she pitched her voice high, frightened. "Is something wrong?" They exchanged glances. The leader, a scarred man with pale eyes, touched his hat. "Apologies, ma'am. We're looking for a man. Might be hurt." "I haven't seen anyone. I've been trapped here by the storm for days." Truth, as far as it went. "It's been frightening, alone out here." "You're the Boston lady," another said. "The one who—" "Yes." She let shame color her voice. "I've rented this cabin to think things through. Please, I have little food and no wish for company." The scarred man studied her, then the cabin. "Mind if we look around? For your safety, of course." "I do mind." She drew herself up, every inch the offended Eastern lady. "I'm alone and unmarried. It would be highly improper." Social conventions still held power, even here. The men shifted uncomfortably, but the leader wasn't ready to give up. "We tracked our man this far. Perhaps he continued past. The storm was fierce. I heard wolves in the night. Perhaps they found him first." She shuddered delicately. "I've been too frightened to venture out." Long moments passed. Finally, the scarred man nodded. "Lock your door, ma'am. These are dangerous times." They rode away, but Evelyn wasn't fool enough to think they'd given up. They'd be back, probably at night, propriety be damned. She barred the door and returned to Cole. His fever had broken while she'd played her role, sweat beading his forehead. His eyes were clearer when they found hers. "You sent them away." His voice was rough but aware. "For now." "Why?" The question hung between them. Why indeed? She could have turned him over, claimed ignorance of the conflict, stayed out of it entirely. "I took an oath once," she said finally, "to do no harm, to heal. Just because I can no longer practice in Boston doesn't mean I've forgotten what that means." He studied her with those storm-gray eyes. "What happened in Boston?" "A patient died. A wealthy man's wife. The birth went wrong. I did everything right, but sometimes that's not enough. He needed someone to blame." She turned away. "A foreign-trained nurse. Daughter of immigrants? Easy target. He spread rumors I'd been negligent, possibly drunk. No hospital would have me after that. So you ran." "So I ran. Rather than marry his chosen candidate, a man who'd overlook my reputation in exchange for my dowry." Bitter laugh. "Seems I traded one set of troubles for another." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "That you saved my life and got dragged into my fight because of it." She checked his bandages, pleased to see no fresh bleeding. "Tell me about this fight." He did, voice growing stronger. The Maddox family had claimed their land and water in the 1870s, back when Wyoming was truly wild. They'd fought Indians, outlaws, weather, and market crashes. Built something from nothing. The creek that ran through their property was life itself. Without it, the cattle died. The ranch died. Thatcher Doyle had arrived 2 years ago, buying up failed homesteads, using legal tricks and intimidation. He'd filed new water rights claims on technicalities, bribed officials, hired guns when law failed. Yesterday, or was it 2 days ago, I was riding to the territorial office with proof of our original claims. They ambushed me 10 miles out. His jaw tightened. Thought they'd killed me. They nearly did. But they didn't count on a Boston lady with medical training hiding in a line shack. Life's funny that way. She helped him sit up, propping him against the wall. "What will you do now?" "Get home, protect what's mine." He looked at her steadily. "But first, I need to get you somewhere safe. This isn't your fight. I became part of it the moment I dragged you inside." She met his gaze squarely. "Besides, where would I go? I have $40 to my name and a reputation in ruins." "Then we help each other." He held out his hand. "Cole Maddox." She took it, feeling the calluses, the strength returning. "Evelyn Hart." Outside, Storm whinnied, a warning. Evelyn doused the lantern as hoofbeats approached again. This time, they weren't bothering with pretense. "They're back," she whispered. Cole reached for his gun, face grim. "Then we best be ready." The siege was about to begin, and Evelyn realized she'd crossed a line. She was no longer just a runaway bride hiding from scandal. She'd chosen a side in a war she barely understood, allied with a man she'd just met, against forces that wouldn't hesitate to destroy them both. But as she loaded the rifle Cole directed her to, his spare from Storm's saddle, she felt something she hadn't in months. Not fear, though that was there too. Purpose. She'd spent so long running from something. Maybe it was time to fight for something instead. The decision came swift as a gunshot. Cole struggled to his feet, one hand pressed to his bandaged side. "We can't defend this shack. Too exposed, too flimsy." Evelyn gathered their meager supplies with practiced efficiency, medical kit, ammunition, what little food remained. "Can you ride?" "Have to." He checked his revolver, movements careful but sure. "Storm will carry double. We make for the ranch. It's 15 miles through Devil's Pass. In the dark, with snow? Better than dying here." He met her eyes. "Unless you'd rather take your chances with Doyle's men. Tell them I forced you. Don't insult me." She threw on her coat, wrapped her medical supplies in oilcloth. "I've made my choice." They slipped out the back as hoofbeats neared the front. Storm waited, ears pricked, sensing danger. Cole hauled himself into the saddle with a grunt of pain, then pulled Evelyn up behind him. She'd never ridden astride, but propriety seemed foolish when running for their lives. "Hold tight," he murmured, and spurred Storm into the trees. Shouts erupted behind them. They'd been spotted. Gunfire cracked through the night, bullets whining past like angry hornets. Evelyn pressed close to Cole's back, feeling him tense with each jarring stride. The mountain trail was treacherous in daylight. At night, with patches of ice and fresh snow hiding drops and obstacles, it was near suicide. But Storm knew his business, picking his way with uncanny sureness, while Cole guided with subtle shifts of weight. There! Evelyn spotted riders converging from the left. Cole veered right, plunging down a slope that made her stomach lurch. Branches tore at them. Storm stumbled, recovered, pressed on. They burst onto a frozen creek bed. Cole reined up sharp, listening. The ice groaned beneath Storm's weight. "It won't hold," Evelyn whispered. No choice. He guided Storm forward, step by careful step. The ice crackled ominously. Behind them, pursuing hoofbeats grew louder. Halfway across, it gave way. Storm lunged as the ice shattered, her front hooves scrabbling for purchase on the far bank. Evelyn felt herself sliding, grabbed for Cole, but momentum carried her sideways into the icy water. The cold hit like a physical blow, driving air from her lungs. Current caught her skirts, dragging her down. She fought upward, broke surface gasping, hands numb already. "Evelyn!" Cole had dismounted, was belly down on solid ice, reaching for her. Their fingers brushed, missed. The current pulled her toward darker water. Then his hand locked on her wrist, iron strong despite his injury. He hauled her up, ice breaking further under their combined weight. She scrambled onto solid ground, teeth chattering violently. Can't feel my hands. Here." He stripped off his coat, wrapped it around her. His shirt showed fresh blood. The stitches had torn. "You're bleeding." "Later." He lifted her onto Storm again, swung up behind her this time, arms around her to take the reins. "Gotta get warm." They rode hard, Cole pushing Storm despite the treacherous footing. The pursuit had fallen back. Maybe the ice had claimed some of them, or they'd chosen caution over chase. Evelyn drifted in and out of awareness, Cole's warmth at her back the only thing keeping her conscious. When Storm finally slowed, she lifted her head to see lights ahead. Buildings. Civilization. "That's home," Cole said in her ear. "Almost there." But as they approached, she realized something was wrong. Too few lights. No smoke from the bunkhouse chimney. The ranch looked half abandoned. A rifle barrel emerged from the main house shadows. "That's far enough. Molly, it's me. Cole." A young woman burst from the doorway, rifle still raised. "They said you were dead. Said Doyle's men—" She took in Evelyn, the blood, the obvious flight. "Get inside, quick!" The house was built for defense. Thick walls, narrow windows, good sight lines. Molly Maddox moved with her brother's economical grace, helping Evelyn to the fire while barking questions. "How bad are you hurt? Who's she? Where's the rest of Doyle's men?" "I'm fine. This is Miss Hart. She saved my life, and Doyle's men are maybe an hour behind." Cole sank into a chair, face gray with pain. "Where is everyone?" "Gone." Molly's face was bitter. "After word came you were dead, Doyle showed up with papers saying he owned the water rights. Gave the hands a choice, work for him or get out. Most got out." "The papers are fake," Evelyn said through chattering teeth. She'd found her voice at last. "The dates are wrong. I can prove it." Both Maddoxes stared at her. "How?" "I've done plenty of paperwork for hospitals, dealt with legal documents. If Doyle filed after Cole was supposedly dead, the timing won't match the territorial seal. Those seals are dated when issued, not when filed." Hope flickered in Molly's eyes. "The originals are in the safe. Papa kept everything." While Cole showed Evelyn to the documents, Molly set about fortifying the house. Tin cans strung on wire across the approaches, ammunition distributed to strategic windows, water barrels filled in case of siege. "You've done this before," Evelyn observed, now in dry clothes from Molly's wardrobe. "Indian raids when I was little, outlaws twice since." The young woman, she couldn't be more than 20, handled weapons with casual expertise, part of ranch life. Evelyn studied the papers by lamplight, her trained eye catching discrepancies. "Here, look at this watermark. The Territorial Office changed their paper supplier in 1886, but this document supposedly from 1885 has the new watermark. You're certain?" "I spent 3 years handling hospital accreditation documents. You learn to spot forgeries." She sorted the papers carefully. "These are your originals, properly dated and sealed. Those are Doyle's fabrications." "Will it be enough?" Cole asked. He'd rebandaged his side, movement stiff but determined. "With the right judge, yes, but first we have to survive to present them." Storm's whinny warned them. Riders approaching. Many riders. "Positions!" Cole ordered. He handed Evelyn a shotgun. "You know how to use this? Point and pull." "Close enough. Don't fire unless they breach the house." They waited in tense silence. The riders stopped just outside rifle range. A voice called out, the scarred man from earlier. "Maddox, we know you're in there. Mr. Doyle offers terms." "Doyle can go to hell. He owns this land now, legal and proper." "You're trespassing." "His papers are forged," Molly shouted. "We have proof." Laughter. "Won't matter if you're dead, little girl." Cole's jaw tightened. "What terms?" "You leave. Tonight, take your sister and that woman. Sign over any remaining claims. Mr. Doyle's feeling generous, won't press charges for shooting at his men. I never shot at anyone. They ambushed me." "That's not how Mr. Doyle sees it." Evelyn understood the game now. Kill Cole, make it legal with forged papers and false witnesses. Clean and tidy. "We need time to consider," she called out, surprising everyone. "Who's that?" "Miss Evelyn Hart of Boston. I'm a witness to these proceedings." She pitched her voice with all the authority she'd once used in hospital wards. "I'll need to examine any legal documents before advising my clients." Silence. Then, "1 hour, Miss Hart, then we come in." The three of them huddled by the fire. "Why buy time?" Molly demanded. "Because I sent a telegram before leaving town." Evelyn lied smoothly. "To a lawyer friend in Cheyenne. If I don't report back, he'll alert the territorial governor." It was thin, but it might make Doyle's men cautious. Cole studied her with those storm-gray eyes. "Quick thinking. I've learned that sometimes a tactical retreat beats a headlong charge." She met his gaze. "But I also learned that some things are worth standing for. This land, your family's legacy, it's worth fighting for." "It's not your fight," he said quietly. "It became mine when I chose to help you." She touched his hand briefly. "I spent months running from a life others chose for me. I won't run from one I've chosen myself." Molly cleared her throat. "Touching. But we still have 20 armed men outside." Cole stood, steadier now. "Then we make ready. They want to fight? We'll give them one." They had less than an hour to prepare for a siege, but as Evelyn loaded shells into the shotgun, she felt oddly calm. She'd found something worth defending, people worth standing beside. Let them come. The hour passed like water through clenched fingers. Evelyn spread the documents across the kitchen table, her mind working with the same precision she'd once applied to medical cases. The forged papers revealed their flaws under scrutiny: inconsistent ink color, mismatched date stamps, and most damning, a clerk's signature from someone who hadn't held office until 1888. "This is irrefutable," she said, organizing the evidence. "And any competent judge would see through Doyle's scheme." Cole studied her work while Molly continued preparations upstairs. "You really did handle legal documents in Boston. Hospital accreditation, supply contracts, death certificates." Her voice caught slightly on the last. "I learned to read between the lines, spot when someone was trying to hide something." Useful skill out here. He winced, adjusting the bandage. Fresh blood seeped through. "Let me look at that. Later. Now." She used her no-nonsense nurse voice. "You're no good to anyone if you bleed out." He submitted to her ministrations, jaw tight as she cleaned and rebandaged the torn stitches. His skin was fever-warm again, infection threatening. "You need rest and proper medical care. What I need is to keep my land." But his hand covered hers briefly. "Thank you." Molly clattered down the stairs. "Riders coming, not Doyle's men, from the East Road." They rushed to the windows. A lone horseman approached under a white flag, or what passed for one, a dirty shirt tied to a rifle barrel. "That's Judge Whelan," Cole said slowly, "from the territorial court." The judge was a thin man with mutton chop whiskers, looking deeply uncomfortable on horseback. He stopped well clear of the house. "Cole Maddox, I'm here to review these supposed documents." "Doyle got to him," Molly muttered. "Maybe, maybe not." Cole called out, "Come in alone, Judge. We'll show you everything." I must remain neutral. Meet me halfway. It stank of trap, but they had few options. Cole started for the door, but Evelyn stopped him. "You can barely stand." "I'll go." "Absolutely not. I'm an outsider, a witness, less threatening." She gathered the documents into a leather portfolio. "Besides, I know these papers better than anyone now." Before he could protest further, she stepped onto the porch. The cold hit hard, but she walked steady. Back straight, every inch the proper Boston lady, despite wearing Molly's split riding skirt. Judge Whelan dismounted as she approached. Up close, she could see the strain in his face, the way his eyes darted toward Doyle's men. "Miss Hart, I presume. Word of your involvement has reached town. Then you know I'm a neutral party, Your Honor. May I present the documentation?" She laid out the evidence methodically on a flat boulder, explaining each discrepancy. The judge listened, fingering his whiskers. "Compelling," he admitted. "But Mr. Doyle has witnesses saying Cole Maddox attacked his men, that this is all fabrication to cover attempted murder." "I was there." She met his eyes directly. "I found Mr. Maddox shot and left for dead. I can testify to that under oath." A runaway bride's word against established citizens?" Heat rose in her cheeks, but she kept her voice level. "A trained medical professional's testimony about the nature of wounds sustained. I've documented everything." She produced her medical notes, written in precise clinical language. The judge studied them, clearly surprised by their thoroughness. Behind them, she could feel the tension ratcheting up. Doyle's men growing restless. The Maddoxes watching from the house. "This is indeed suggestive of—" A gunshot cracked. The judge's horse screamed, rearing as blood bloomed on its flank. Everything erupted into chaos. "It's a trick!" someone shouted. "Maddox is shooting!" But the shot had come from Doyle's men. Evelyn had seen the muzzle flash. A false flag operation to justify attack. "Get down!" She pushed the judge behind the boulder as more shots rang out. Papers scattered in the wind. From the house, Cole and Molly returned fire, careful shots to drive the attackers back. Evelyn scrambled to gather the documents, muddy snow soaking through her skirts. "We have to get to the house," she told the terrified judge. "They'll kill us! They'll kill us here!" She hauled him up, half dragging him toward safety as bullets whined overhead. Cole burst from the door, rifle in hand, covering their retreat. They tumbled inside as windows shattered around them. "Well, Judge," Cole said grimly, "still think we're the aggressors?" Whelan huddled by the fireplace, face pale. "This is madness. I came to arbitrate. You came because Doyle wanted legitimacy," Molly snapped, reloading. "Bet he promised you a cut." "I never, that is," the judge straightened slightly. "I came because the law required it. These documents." He gestured at the muddy papers Evelyn was trying to salvage. "They do raise questions. Questions we'll never answer if Doyle kills us all," Cole pointed out. The siege settled into sporadic exchanges. Doyle's men had good positions but couldn't approach without crossing open ground. The house was strong but couldn't hold forever. As darkness fell, Evelyn set up a makeshift medical station in the kitchen. She'd treated 2 grazing wounds on Molly and rebandaged Cole twice. The judge had proven surprisingly useful, helping reload weapons with shaking hands. "We can't last," Cole said quietly during a lull. "Food's low, ammunition lower." "The hands who left," Evelyn said suddenly. "Where did they go?" "Town, mostly, looking for work." "And if they knew you were alive? That Doyle's claim was false?" Hope flickered in his eyes. "Tom Santos, my foreman, he'd rally them. But how would we get word?" She looked at the judge. "You could leave. They want you alive to legitimize this." "I couldn't possibly. You've seen the truth. You know what's happening here." She fixed him with a stare that had once made interns quake. "You can ride out. Tell the real story. Bring help." Whelan twisted his hands. "They'd know. Stop me." "Not if we create a distraction." Cole's smile was sharp. "Molly, remember what Pa taught us about the old mine shaft?" His sister grinned. "Black powder's still in the barn." They worked through the night preparing. Evelyn found herself mixing explosive charges under Molly's direction, using her precise measurements from years of preparing medications. Strange how skills translated. "You're not what I expected," Molly said quietly. "When I heard about the Boston Runaway, I figured you for soft, useless. I was soft once. Life has a way of hardening you, or breaking you." "That too." Evelyn tied off a charge. "But broken things can be reset stronger. I should know. I've set enough bones." Near dawn, they were ready. The judge would slip out the back while they blew the old mine shaft, drawing attention. It was desperate, thin hope, but better than waiting to die. "If this doesn't work," Cole started. "It will," Evelyn interrupted. "It has to." He caught her hand. "Either way, I'm glad you found me in that snow." "So am I." The words came out softer than intended. "If we get through this, you could stay. Not as someone hiding, but as someone with purpose. This territory needs medical care. You could start fresh. Assuming we live through the next hour." "Assuming that," Molly cleared her throat. "Sun's coming up." They took positions. The judge slipped out the back door, heading for the horses. Evelyn lit the long fuse, watched it spark toward the mine shaft. The explosion, when it came, was magnificent. Rock and flame erupted skyward, drawing shouts and confusion from Doyle's men. In the chaos, Whelan galloped away, bent low over his horse's neck. "He made it!" Molly shouted, but their triumph was short-lived. Doyle's men, realizing the deception, pressed the attack with renewed fury. The front door splintered under assault. As Evelyn raised the shotgun, she thought wildly that this wasn't how she'd imagined her life going. From Boston drawing rooms to a Wyoming shootout. But standing beside the Maddoxes, fighting for something real and true, she felt more alive than she had in years. Let them come. She'd found her ground, and she'd hold it. Dawn broke blood red over the mountains as Thatcher Doyle himself rode through the gates of Maddox Range. He sat his horse like a man who'd bought his way into respectability. Expensive clothes that didn't quite fit the frontier, clean hands that had never worked cattle. Behind him rode 20 men, faces hard with greed and violence. Maddox. His voice carried the confidence of assumed victory. "Let's discuss this like civilized men." From the battered house, Cole stepped onto the porch. Blood had soaked through his shirt again, but he stood straight. Evelyn positioned herself at the window with a shotgun, Molly at the other with her rifle. "Nothing civilized about ambush and forgery, Doyle." "Forgery?" Doyle produced papers from his coat with theatrical flourish. I have legal documentation. You have the word of a runaway bride and a corrupt judge who fled rather than uphold the law. Whelan saw the evidence. Your papers won't stand scrutiny. What scrutiny? Doyle's smile was cold. Dead men don't testify. Neither do hysterical women. The threat hung in the morning air like frost. Evelyn's hands tightened on the shotgun. Through the window, she could see riders positioning themselves, cutting off escape routes. However, Doyle continued, I'm a reasonable man. Sign over your claims, leave Wyoming territory, and this ends peacefully. This land has been Maddox land for 20 years, Cole said quietly. My father is buried on that hill. My mother planted those cottonwoods by the creek. You think I'll hand that over to a carpetbagger with forged papers? Then you'll join your father. Doyle raised his hand, the signal to attack. But before he could drop it, thunder rolled across the valley. Not storm thunder, hoofbeats. Dozens of horses raising dust clouds against the morning sun. Riders coming, one of Doyle's men shouted. From town. Through the dust emerged Marshal Hal Avery, federal badge gleaming, leading a posse of 15 men. But more importantly, riding alongside were Cole's former ranch hands, Tom Santos at their head, men who'd worked Maddox land and knew its worth. Stand down, Avery's voice carried federal authority. Everyone hold your fire. Doyle's composure cracked slightly. Marshal, this is a private property dispute. Is that so? Avery dismounted, moving with the easy confidence of a man who'd faced down worse than hired guns. Because Judge Whelan tells a different story. Something about forged documents and attempted murder. Whelan's been bribed. Hard to bribe a man into riding through the night with bullet holes in his coat. The marshal produced a leather portfolio. He brought these. Interesting reading. Federal seals that don't match, signatures from dead men. Sloppy work, Doyle. From the house, Evelyn watched the tide turn. Doyle's men exchanged uncertain glances. Fighting a rancher was one thing. Fighting a federal marshal was another. You have no jurisdiction. Water rights that cross territorial boundaries? Federal jurisdiction. Avery's hand rested on his pistol. I'm taking these documents to the federal court in Cheyenne. In the meantime, you and your men will vacate Maddox property. This isn't over, Doyle snarled. I have rights. You have the right to leave, now. Cole had moved down from the porch, his former hands falling in beside him. Or we can settle this the old way. For a moment, violence trembled in the air. Then Doyle jerked his horse around. You'll regret this, Maddox. You and your whore. Cole's fist connected with Doyle's jaw before he could finish. The man tumbled from his saddle into the mud. His men reached for guns, but found themselves staring down federal rifles. Anyone else have something to say about Miss Hart? Cole asked quietly. Silence. Doyle struggled to his feet, nose bleeding, dignity shattered. He mounted clumsily and led his men out, their departure watched by hard eyes. As the dust settled, Evelyn emerged from the house. The aftermath of siege lay everywhere. Bullet holes, shattered windows, scared earth. But they'd held. Miss Hart. Marshal Avery touched his hat. Judge Whelan spoke highly of your documentation. Said you'd make a fine legal clerk. I'm a nurse, Marshal, though recent events have broadened my skills. Tom Santos approached Cole, weathered face creased with concern. Boss, we heard you were dead. Most of us lit out, but when word came, you were alive and making a stand. You came back. Cole gripped his foreman's shoulder. All of you. This is our land too. Maybe not by deed, but by sweat and years. Santos looked at the assembled hands. We'll need to move the herd to the south pasture, fix the fence lines Doyle's men cut. As the men dispersed to assess damage, Avery drew Cole aside. This isn't finished. Doyle will try the courts, probably attempt to bribe judges in Cheyenne. Let him try. We have the truth. Truth doesn't always win in court. The marshal glanced at Evelyn. You'll need every advantage, including witnesses with credibility. Cole understood. A runaway bride's testimony might be dismissed, but a respected medical professional, someone established in the community. Later, as the sun climbed toward noon, Evelyn stood by the creek that had caused so much bloodshed. The water ran clear and cold, indifferent to human conflict. She heard Cole approach, his step careful on the rocky ground. Your side needs proper treatment, she said without turning. And rest. Real rest. Not this cowboy stoicism. In a moment, he stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I owe you more than I can say. You owe me nothing. I made my choices. That's what I mean. He turned her to face him. You could have walked away a dozen times. Should have. But you stayed. I've been walking away for months. From Boston, from a life that wasn't mine, from who I thought I was supposed to be. She met his storm-gray eyes. Maybe I was just tired of running. Or maybe you found something worth standing for. The words hung between them, weighted with possibility. Around them, the ranch stirred to life. Men calling to each other, hammers ringing as repairs began, life reasserting itself after crisis. Your offer? Evelyn said quietly. About staying, starting a practice here. I meant it. This territory needs doctors. The nearest is 30 miles, and he's a drunk. Cole's expression softened. But more than that, we need people with courage. People who see what's right and act on it. It wouldn't be easy. An unmarried woman, Eastern-trained with a clouded reputation. Since when has easy mattered to you? She laughed, surprising herself. Fair point. Molly appeared on the porch, hands on hips. Are you two going to stand there mooning or help with the work? This ranch won't repair itself. They walked back together. Evelyn already cataloging medical supplies she'd need to order. Space that could be converted for a clinic. It wouldn't be the prestigious Boston hospital she'd once dreamed of, but it would be hers, built on her terms, serving people who needed her skills. One thing, Cole said as they reached the house. Doyle was wrong about many things. But he was right that this isn't over. He'll come at us through the courts, through politics, any way he can. Then we'd better be ready. Evelyn rolled up her sleeves, nurse practical again. Now sit down and let me properly stitch that wound before you bleed to death and make all this effort pointless. As she worked, she could hear the ranch coming back to life around them. Men returning to their jobs, repairs beginning, the ordinary business of survival resuming. They'd won this battle. But the war for Maddox Range, and for their futures, was far from over. But for now, in this moment, it was enough to be alive, to be useful, to have found a place worth defending and people worth standing beside. The rest they'd face as it came, together. The weeks following the siege brought a strange normalcy to Maddox Range. Fences mended, cattle counted, the rhythm of ranch life reasserting itself like grass through snow. But beneath the routine work lay a current of anticipation, everyone waiting for Doyle's next move. Evelyn had claimed the old grain storage building for her clinic, spending her days clearing dust and sorting salvageable materials. The space was rough but solid, with good light from high windows and proximity to fresh water. Tom Santos and his men helped when they could, building shelves and installing a proper examining table cobbled from ranch materials. Never thought I'd see a real doctor setting up in these parts, Santos commented, helping her hang a curtain for privacy. Most of us just relied on whiskey and prayers when hurt came calling. Whiskey has its medical uses, Evelyn replied, arranging her precious supplies. But proper wound care prevents the infections that kill more men than bullets out here. Word spread quickly through the valley. Within days, she had her first patients, a ranch hand with a festering cut, a pregnant homesteader's wife seeking reassurance, children with persistent coughs. She treated them all, often accepting payment in eggs, preserved goods, or simple labor for the clinic. Cole watched this transformation from afar, his own recovery steady under her care. The wound had healed clean, leaving only a puckered scar and occasional stiffness. But something else was healing too, the isolation that had crept into his life since his father's death, the hardness that came from fighting alone. She's good for this place, Molly observed one evening, watching Evelyn teach a group of mothers about preventing childhood fever. Good for you too, if you'd stop being so thick-headed about it. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. His sister's directness hadn't softened with recent events. She stood with us when she had every reason to run. That tells you everything about her character. But Cole knew the situation was more complex. Letters had begun arriving from Cheyenne, legal documents, summons, the slow machinery of Doyle's court challenge grinding forward. The man hadn't given up, just changed tactics. One afternoon, while Evelyn was treating a broken arm, A familiar figure appeared at the ranch. Judge Whelan, looking healthier than when he'd fled under fire, but still nervous. "Marshal Avery sent me," he explained over coffee in the kitchen. "The federal court wants depositions from everyone involved. Doyle's hired Maxwell Sterling from Denver, best lawyer money can buy." "And we have?" Cole asked. "Truth, documents, witnesses." Whelan hesitated. "But Sterling's known for destroying witnesses on the stand, especially women with complicated backgrounds." Cole's jaw tightened. "Meaning Evelyn. Her testimony is crucial. She can speak to finding you shot, the forged documents, everything, but Sterling will dig into her Boston scandal, paint her as unreliable, a woman of questionable morals who fled rather than face consequences. She fled lies and injustice. We know that, but a courtroom—" Whelan spread his hands. "It can be cruel to women who step outside expected boundaries." That evening, Cole found Evelyn in her clinic, sterilizing instruments by lamplight. He explained Whelan's warning, watching her face carefully. "I expected this," she said calmly. "Men like Doyle always attack the messenger when they can't dispute the message. You don't have to testify. We have other witnesses." "Who weren't there when you were shot, who didn't examine the documents with trained eyes." She set down her instruments. "I won't hide from this, Cole. I've done enough hiding. Sterling will be vicious. He'll drag your name through mud, twist everything about Boston. Let him try." Fire flickered in her eyes. "I've been accused of letting a patient die through negligence. The truth is, I fought for hours to save her, used every technique I knew, but she'd been allowed to labor too long before they called me, and the baby was already gone. When she died too, her husband needed someone to blame besides himself." Cole listened, hearing the old pain beneath clinical words. "I could have stayed, fought the accusations, but the hospital board made it clear. Accept dismissal quietly, or face public hearings where my father's immigrant status, my unwomanly pursuit of medicine, everything would be used against me. So I ran." She met his eyes. "I won't run again. This is different. This is my fight, our fight." She stepped closer. "When did you become so dense, Cole Maddox? This stopped being just your fight the moment I dragged you out of that snow." The next weeks became preparation for battle in a different arena. Evelyn documented everything meticulously. Medical reports on Cole's wound, analysis of the forged papers, timeline of events. Whelan helped prepare her for cross-examination, though his attempts to shake her proved futile. "You're remarkably composed," he said after a particularly aggressive mock questioning. "I've been questioned by medical boards and hospital administrators. Lawyers don't frighten me." But Cole saw the toll it took, the tightness around her eyes, the way she threw herself into clinic work as distraction. The community rallied around her, patients becoming defenders, but she remained focused on the coming trial. 2 days before they were to leave for Cheyenne, trouble arrived in unexpected form. A well-dressed woman stepped down from the stage, accompanied by a younger man with familiar features. Cole recognized the type immediately. Eastern quality, the kind that announced itself in every gesture. "I'm looking for Miss Evelyn Hart," the woman announced at the general store. "I'm Mrs. Catherine Worthington, her former employer's wife. This is my son, James, her former fiancé." Word reached the ranch within hours. Evelyn went very still when told, then returned to mixing medicines with steady hands. "They've come to drag you back," Molly said bluntly. "Most likely. Or to ensure I can't testify credibly." Evelyn corked a bottle carefully. "Catherine Worthington has significant influence. If she's here, Doyle's money brought her." "We won't let them," Cole started. "Let them what? Talk to me? They have that right." She smoothed her apron. "I'll meet them in town tomorrow, publicly. Let's see what price they've put on destroying my reputation entirely." The meeting took place at the hotel dining room, half the town finding reasons to linger nearby. Mrs. Worthington sat rigid as carved marble, her son fidgeting beside her. "Evelyn!" The older woman's voice dripped disapproval. "You've led us quite a chase." "I wasn't aware anyone was chasing, Catherine. I left a clear letter ending my engagement. After humiliating our family, leaving poor James at the altar, I left 3 days before the wedding. Hardly the altar." Evelyn's voice remained level. "And I explained my reasons clearly. I wouldn't enter marriage under false pretenses. James finally spoke, his weak chin trembling. I would have protected you from the scandal. Father arranged everything. The hospital would have taken you back after a suitable period. As your wife, silent about my work, grateful for rehabilitation. Evelyn shook her head. That wasn't protection, James. It was a prettier cage. Mrs. Worthington leaned forward. You have one chance to salvage something from this disaster. Return with us. Marry James quietly. In exchange, we'll forget certain details about your time here, your association with these people. The threat hung clear. Testify, and they'd ensure her complete ruin. But Evelyn smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. Catherine, you still don't understand. I'm not the desperate girl who fled Boston. I've found work that matters, people who judge me by my actions, not my compliance with society's expectations. She stood. There's nothing you can threaten me with that's worse than the life you're offering. You'll be destroyed. I've been destroyed before. I survived. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have patients waiting. She walked out, head high, leaving stunned silence behind. Cole caught up with her outside, finding her hands shaking despite her calm facade. That was remarkable. That was necessary. She breathed deep. They'll make good on their threats. Sterling will have ammunition now, the runaway bride who rejected respectability, who chose to live among rough men, who chose courage over comfort. He took her hands, steadying them, who saved lives and fought for justice. Let Sterling twist that how he will. Truth has a way of shining through. She looked up at him, something shifting in her expression. When did you become an optimist? When a stubborn Eastern woman taught me that running towards something is better than running away. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then Evelyn squeezed his hands and stepped back. We have a trial to prepare for, and I have a feeling it's going to be worse than we imagined. She was right. Word came that evening. Sterling had been in contact with the Worthingtons. The trial would be as much about character assassination as water rights. But as Cole watched Evelyn return to her clinic, treating a child's scraped knee with the same care she'd given his gunshot wound, he knew something Sterling didn't. Truth might not always win in court, but truth backed by courage, community, and conviction, that was a combination worth betting on. The Cheyenne courthouse stood like a fortress of law against the spring sky. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Water rights cases rarely drew such crowds, but word of the Boston runaway bride testifying against Thatcher Doyle had spread like wildfire. Evelyn sat beside Cole in the witness area, her medical training serving her well in maintaining composure. She wore her most conservative dress, hair severely pinned, every inch the professional woman despite Sterling's intended narrative. Remember, Whelan whispered, answer only what's asked. Don't volunteer information. But Evelyn knew Sterling wouldn't make it that simple. The lawyer prowled the courtroom like a well-fed predator, his silver hair and expensive suit designed to impress. When called to testify, she walked to the stand with measured steps. The initial questions were straightforward. Her name, her training, how she came to be in Wyoming. Then Sterling struck. Miss Hart, is it true you fled Boston mere days before your wedding? I ended my engagement and left Boston, yes. Fled, in the night, without word to your fiancé. Sterling's voice dripped false sympathy. After being dismissed from Massachusetts General Hospital under scandalous circumstances, I was dismissed after a patient died despite my best efforts. Her husband, a hospital benefactor, needed someone to blame. So you say, but isn't it true that multiple witnesses testified to your negligence? Evelyn's hand stayed steady on the rail. Witnesses who weren't present during the delivery, who based their testimony on the grieving husband's accusations. A grieving husband whose wife died under your care. Sterling turned to the jury, and rather than face these accusations properly, you ran, just as you ran from your wedding. One might say running from responsibility is a pattern. From the gallery, she heard murmurs, but also familiar voices. Her patients, ranch families who traveled to support her. Their presence bolstered her spine. I left situations where the truth wasn't wanted or welcomed, she said clearly. That's different from running from responsibility. Sterling smiled, shark-like. Let's discuss your current situation. You're living unmarried on a ranch with 2 bachelors, treating male patients in private. I live in town, Mr. Sterling. I maintain a clinic that serves the entire valley. My residence and practice are entirely proper. Yet you were alone with Mr. Maddox in an isolated cabin for days, unchaperoned, tending to his intimate wounds. The implication hung heavy. Evelyn felt heat rise but kept her voice level. I provided emergency medical care to a man who would have died without it. I've done the same for dozens of patients since, regardless of gender or station. How noble. Sterling's tone suggested otherwise. Tell me, Miss Hart, what exactly is your relationship with Mr. Maddox? He is my patient and my friend. Just friends? Despite the fact that you risked your life for him, defended his property with violence, chose his cause over your own safety? I chose justice over injustice, right over wrong. Or perhaps you chose the attraction of a wealthy rancher over the embarrassment of returning to Boston? Objection, Whelan called out. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. The judge, a stern man named Garrett, frowned at Sterling. Keep to relevant questions. Sterling shifted tactics. Let's discuss these supposed forged documents. You claim expertise in detecting such forgeries. I spent years handling medical and legal documents in Boston. I know how to spot inconsistencies. Medical documents, not land deeds or water rights. Fraud follows patterns regardless of document type. Ink inconsistencies, anachronistic watermarks, impossible dates, these are universal tells. She walked through her analysis methodically, professionally, letting her expertise shine through Sterling's attempts to diminish it. But he wasn't finished. Miss Hart, have you been promised anything for your testimony today? Perhaps permanent residence, a clinic building, maybe something more personal from Mr. Maddox? The courtroom stirred. Cole's jaw tightened visibly. I've been promised nothing, Evelyn replied. I testify because I witnessed attempted murder and fraud, because staying silent would make me complicit. How very principled. Sterling retrieved papers from his desk. I have here affidavits from Boston, from Mrs. Catherine Worthington, from hospital board members, all attesting to your difficult temperament and unwomanly ambitions. Your pattern of defying authority, my pattern of refusing to accept lies as truth. The words came sharper now. Yes, I defied those who would blame me for a tragedy beyond anyone's control. Yes, I refused to marry a man I didn't love to appease social expectations. And yes, I stood with the Maddoxes against those who would steal their land through violence and forgery. If that makes me difficult, then I accept the label gladly. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom, not all disapproving. Sterling's face darkened. You stand there, admitted runaway, dismissed from your profession, living in scandal, and expect this court to take your word over established citizens? Evelyn stood straighter. I expect this court to examine evidence, not character assassinations, to judge based on facts, not social prejudices. The documents are forged. Any competent expert will confirm this. Mr. Maddox was shot and left for dead. I have medical documentation proving it. These are facts, Mr. Sterling. My personal choices don't change them. Your personal choices speak to credibility. No! She cut him off, propriety finally cracking. My personal choices speak to my refusal to live a lie, which is more than can be said for your client, who built his entire claim on deception. Your Honor, Sterling protested. But Judge Garrett looked thoughtful. The witness has a point, Counselor. Perhaps we should focus on the documents themselves rather than Miss Hart's domestic arrangements. The rest of her testimony centered on technical details. The forgeries, the medical evidence, the timeline of events. Sterling tried repeatedly to drag her back to personal attacks, but Evelyn held firm, answering with clinical precision. When finally dismissed, she walked past Sterling without acknowledgement, past Doyle's sneer, past the Worthingtons' disapproving glares. Only when she reached Cole did she allow herself a moment of vulnerability, his steady presence anchoring her. You were magnificent, he said quietly. I was honest. Whether it's enough? She shrugged, exhaustion creeping in. The trial continued for days. Other witnesses testified. Marshal Avery about the scene at the ranch, Judge Whelan about the documents, ranch hands about the ambush site. But everyone knew Evelyn's testimony was the linchpin. During a recess, James Worthington approached her outside the courthouse. It's not too late, Evelyn. Mother has influence. We could make this all disappear. At what cost, James? A small one. Marriage to me. A quiet life. Is that so terrible? She looked at him. Really looked. Weak chin, soft hands, eyes that never quite met hers. A man who'd never fought for anything, never stood against the tide. Yes, she said simply. It would be terrible, because it would be a lie. You'd rather have this? He gestured at the courthouse. Scandal, uncertainty, association with violent men. I'd rather have truth, purpose, the respect of people who judge me by my actions. She smiled sadly. You never understood that about me, James. You saw what you wanted, a proper wife, a social asset. Not who I actually am. And who are you? Someone who saves lives, who fights for justice, who chooses difficult truths over comfortable lies. She touched his arm gently. Find someone who wants the life you're offering, James. It was never meant to be me. She left him standing there, returning to the courtroom where her chosen family waited. Cole and Molly, Tom Santos and the ranch families. Her patience. People who knew her worth wasn't measured in social standing, but in steady hands and stubborn courage. Closing arguments began the next day. Sterling painted her as a fallen woman whose testimony was bought with promises of protection. Whelan countered with facts, evidence, the clear trail of Doyle's deception. As the jury retired to deliberate, Evelyn stood with Cole on the courthouse steps. Whatever happens, I regret nothing. Nor do I. He took her hand, no longer caring who saw. You gave me back my life, twice over, first from that bullet, then from the isolation I'd wrapped around myself. Cole, I should have said this sooner. That night you asked what you were to me, I said, friend, because I thought it's what you needed to hear. But you're more than that, Evelyn. You're— The jury's returning! Someone shouted. They filed back inside, hands still linked to hear their fate decided. But Evelyn realized something had already been decided, there on the courthouse steps. Whatever the verdict, she'd found her place, her people, her purpose. The rest was just paperwork. 1 year later, the first snow of winter drifted down on Maddox Range like a blessing. Evelyn stood on the porch of her clinic, watching the flakes settle on the ground where she'd first found Cole bleeding in the storm. So much had changed since that desperate night. The verdict had come down in their favor. The jury saw through Doyle's deceptions, upheld the Maddox water rights, and referred the matter of forgery to criminal court. Doyle himself had fled to California ahead of arrest warrants, his empire of lies crumbling. Marshal Avery still sent occasional updates on the manhunt, but most folks figured Doyle had learned the hard way that Wyoming justice had a long memory. Morning, Doc Hart. She turned to see young Timothy Santos, Tom's son, trudging through the snow with his mother. The boy had broken his arm in the spring, and she'd been monitoring the healing. How's the arm, Timothy? He flexed it proudly. Strong as new. Pa says I can help with the calving come spring. Inside the clinic, now properly equipped with supplies ordered from Denver and San Francisco, Evelyn examined the healed bone with satisfaction. The makeshift medical practice had grown into something real, serving not just Maddox Range but the entire valley. She'd delivered 12 babies, set countless bones, treated everything from snake bites to pneumonia. You've got a gift, Mrs. Santos said, watching Evelyn work. Not just for healing, but for teaching. Half the mothers in the valley know proper wound care now because of you. It was true. Evelyn had started holding weekly sessions on basic medical knowledge. How to recognize fever patterns when a wound needed professional attention. How to prevent the spread of illness. Knowledge that could mean life or death on isolated homesteads. As the Santos family left, Cole appeared in the doorway, snowflakes dusting his shoulders. Busy morning? The usual, though Mrs. Patterson insists her rooster has consumption. He laughed, the sound warming the room more than the pot-bellied stove. That rooster's too mean to die. Speaking of which, Molly's threatening to cook Ornery Pete if he chases her one more time. That turkey has personality. That turkey has the devil in him. He stepped inside, suddenly serious. There's something I need to show you. They rode out together on Storm, now fully accepting of Evelyn as his rider. The ranch spread before them, healthier than ever. The legal victory had restored confidence. Hired hands returned, cattle prices improved, and the water flowed freely to all who had rightful claim. Cole guided Storm to a rise overlooking the valley. Below, the creek wound through snow-covered land, the cottonwoods his mother had planted standing sentinel along its banks. "My father proposed to my mother here," he said quietly. "Said he wanted her to see what they'd build together." Evelyn's breath caught as he dismounted, helping her down. The snow fell softer here, sheltered by the trees. "I'm not good with fancy words, Evelyn. Never have been, but this last year—" He took her hands, work-roughened, meeting healing-worn. "You didn't just save my life that night. You saved my soul from turning bitter, showed me that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about choosing who to stand with." "Cole, let me finish. I know you've got your clinic, your independence. I'm not asking you to give that up. Never would. But I am asking if you'd consider building something together. Not just a ranch or a medical practice, but a life. A real home." From his pocket, he produced a simple gold band. "It was my mother's. She was a fighter too, came out here when everyone said a minister's daughter couldn't survive. Proved them wrong by living, loving, raising children who knew their worth wasn't in what others thought, but in what they did." Evelyn looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the land spread below where she'd found purpose and peace. "I came here running from a life others chose for me. I know. I'm not the easiest woman to live with. I'll always put patience first, always speak my mind, probably scandalize the proper ladies in town regularly. I'm counting on it." She smiled then, bright as sun on snow. "Then yes, Cole Maddox. I'll marry you, build with you, argue with you when you're being thick-headed, and patch you up when you're being reckless." He slipped the ring on her finger, then kissed her as the snow fell around them. A kiss that tasted of promise and home and all the years ahead. The wedding took place in spring, when the meadows bloomed with wildflowers and the creek ran high with snowmelt. Not in a Boston cathedral with hundreds of society witnesses, but in the yard of Maddox Range with everyone who mattered present. Judge Whelan officiated, having become a friend through the trials. Marshal Avery stood as witness. Molly, fierce in her joy, served as maid of honor. Even the Worthingtons had sent a letter, not of congratulations, but of formal acknowledgement that ended any claims between them. Evelyn wore her mother's wedding dress, altered by the local seamstress, with wildflowers in her hair instead of orange blossoms. Cole waited at the makeshift altar in his best suit, looking at her like she was the sunrise after a long night. "You sure about this?" Molly whispered as she adjusted Evelyn's veil. "He snores something terrible, and he's stubborn as that old bull in the north pasture." "I'm sure." Evelyn squeezed her soon-to-be sister's hand. "I've never been more sure of anything." The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional with personal additions. Cole promised to support her work, never asking her to be less than she was. Evelyn promised to stand beside him through drought and plenty, to build something lasting from the foundation of trust they'd forged. When Whelan pronounced them married, the cheer that went up could be heard in the next valley. The celebration lasted into the night, dancing to fiddle music, tables groaning with food, children running between the dancers while their parents told stories of the siege, the trial, the triumph of truth over lies. As the stars came out, Evelyn and Cole slipped away to the porch of what was now their home. The clinic building stood nearby, lamplight in its windows where Molly was showing the newest ranch wife how to properly store medicines. "No regrets?" Cole asked, arm around her shoulders. "None." She leaned into his warmth. "A year ago, I was alone in a cabin with $40 and no future. Now you're a respected doctor, a rancher's wife, and the terror of corrupt speculators everywhere." She laughed. "Is that what they're calling me?" "Among other things. Tom Santos says you've got more sand than most men he knows." High praise from Tom. She turned serious. "I love you, Cole. Not for saving me or giving me a place to belong, but for seeing who I am and believing I was enough. More than enough." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "You're everything." They sat in comfortable silence, watching snow begin to fall again. Not the desperate storm that had brought them together, but gentle flakes that promised good water come spring. Grass for the cattle, life continuing its eternal cycle. In the barn, Storm whinnied, answered by the new mare Cole had bought for Evelyn. In the bunkhouse, hands played cards and told tall tales. And in the big house, Two people who'd found each other in the midst of crisis built their life together, one shared moment at a time. The world Cole had promised Evelyn wasn't made of grand gestures or Eastern luxuries. It was built from dawn coffee and evening conversations, from shared work and mutual respect, from the knowledge that whatever storms came, literal or figurative, they'd weather them together. As the snow continued to fall, Evelyn thought of that desperate night when she'd chosen to drag a dying stranger from a blizzard. One choice, one moment of deciding that helping mattered more than hiding, had led to all of this. Love, purpose, home. The wind picked up, rattling the windows, but inside was warmth and light, and the steady presence of the man beside her. Let the winter come. They'd built something strong enough to last, rooted deep as the cottonwoods by the creek, enduring as the mountains that sheltered the valley. In the distance, wolves howled. Not the threatening sound of that first night, but simply wild creatures living their lives in the vast Wyoming territory. And in the house on Maddox Range, two people who'd saved each other in all the ways that mattered settled in for their first night of marriage, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The old grain shed had become a beacon of healing. The ranch born of determination had become a symbol of justice. And two lonely souls had discovered that sometimes the greatest adventure isn't in running away. It's in choosing where to stand and who to stand beside. Home, Evelyn reflected as Cole led her inside, wasn't a place you were born to or ran from. It was a place you built, one choice at a time, with someone who saw your strength and never asked you to be less. And here, in this unlikely corner of Wyoming, she'd found hers at last. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I hope you enjoyed following Evelyn and Cole's journey from that fateful snowy night to their wedding day. Where are you listening to this story from? I'd love to know. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more tales of courage, love, and adventure from the American frontier. What did you think of Evelyn's choice to stand and fight rather than run? Share your thoughts. I read every comment and love hearing from you all. Until next time, partners.